I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order. Otto, please call the roll.
Mr. Rath?
Here.
Mr. Blake?
Here.
Mr. Bub?
Here.
Mr. Cost?
Here.
Mr. Fennell?
Here.
Mr. Frazier?
Present.
Ms. Hall? Here. Mr. Labutus?
Here.
Mr. Lang?
Here.
And Mr. Marmee?
Here.
We have all here this evening. If you please rise for the invocation by Mr. Blake, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
You bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we welcome you into this space. Calm us, nurture us, lead us as we make decisions on behalf of the people of Newark. May you watch over us and guide us. May you always have the best interests of your people in mind. With this, we all praise. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Next on the agenda, we have caucus. That's the time for council to discuss anything pertaining to the agenda tonight. Do we have anything? Okay. Next, we have the minutes of our October 1st, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those? Motion. Motion by Mr. Labutus.
Second.
Second by Mr. Cost. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. We have one report from standing committees this evening from Finance. Without objection, that will be received and filed. We also have two reports from city officials this evening. One from our auditor, Stephen Johnson, the operating report for the period ending September 30th, 2018, and one from Barb Jones, our city tax administrator, the income tax reports for a period ending September 30th, 2018. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Next on the agenda this evening, we have comments from citizens. There are two places for comments from citizens. One is now and one is after the legislation. Again, this is not a debate with council. This is your chance to be heard. Do we have anyone for this first section? If you just please raise your hand. Ma'am, if you'd just like to come up to the lectern there so we can hear you, just give us your name and address for the record. Or podium.
Hello, my name is Melinda Bolster. I live at 494 Beacon Road. My concern is the new venue. Saturday evening when the venue started, it was so loud that my dog didn't want to go outside. We had to give her 2 anxiety pills because she was just shaking so bad. My grandchildren spent the night and they didn't even want to go to sleep. They were scared because of the booming. It was just so loud and the vulgar language. It was just horrible. We had a TV a little louder than normal, a box fan. Our windows were completely shut and you could still hear the booming in the house. And we're just concerned because we just bought our property a year ago. And the reason why we decided to buy this property is it was so quiet. We like to sit outside in the evening and just, listen to nature. Because we have a big backyard, trees, and you can just hear crickets. And it's just nice because wildlife will come up and we have feed out there for the deer. And it's just it's our serene, and we're just concerned that me and my fiance that if this venue, I'm all about having fun, but the noise is just horrible. And we're just afraid that we're going to end up prisoners in our own home on the weekends just to get away from the noise.
And this, just to be clear, where was the venue?
On National Drive, the Roost on
the river? Kind of by the field there by the Moose, is that?
Yes, it just amplifies all the way up the valley. And our neighborhood is a nice, quiet neighborhood.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? Ma'am?
Hi, my name is Raynell O'Connor. I just got married, sorry. And I am concerned about the same venue. We just bought the house in August, and I'm going to just say one of the selling points of it was the yard, and we have a gorgeous patio. And we were looking for a place that was quiet, that we could have friends and family and our church family over, and that we could have Bible studies outside and do things. And when we heard this, we thought, wow, this just isn't going to work. So that was a concern for us too, and especially the vulgarity.
Thank you. Ma'am? Ma'am, could you tell me what your address is? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, 481 Beacon.
Thank you. Ma'am?
I'm Kimberly Broyles. My husband Howard Broyles and I live at 514 Beacon Road, and we're in the contingent here about the roost on the river. I have recordings that I made, just I think at 9 something at night, and then 10:30 or 11, and everything was so loud that you could clearly hear when they were just speaking on stage. You could hear everything they said. You could hear the lyrics when they were singing. And it, like she said, it was just, the bass was just booming, and we had our windows shut and our doors shut and TV on, and you still just felt it, you know? And I guess our main thing is that if they want to have concerts, I'm okay with that. I would probably go to some of them. But they need to be good neighbors and turn it down at a decent hour. 10 o'clock. We called the police and they said that they had a permit to keep going until midnight. And I think they had advertised that it would go until 1. And that's crazy. They're right in the middle of a residential area. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am?
Hello, I'm Vanessa Evans on 22 Summit Street. And my concerns are the same, big backyard. My worry is next summer when it continues, if we want to sit outside, we have to be subjected to this. And, I think there is a sound ordinance that should be, they are in the city limits. And I'm just worried too of another Legend Valley or what else, we're trying to beautify downtown, and then who knows what could be brought in. So that's my concern.
Thank you. Anyone else for this first section? Ma'am? Anyone else on this first section?
Hi, Rochelle Volan-Smith, 237 Violet Court. I have to say, I live 10 miles away from this venue, and I was able to, it was actually vibrating off of my house, and that cannot be healthy. I imagine the animals were in pain. It was uncomfortable for children. It was certainly uncomfortable for me, and that is 10 miles away. That's beyond what should be permissible in terms of being a health hazard. Thank you.
Is that the one at Legend Valley, or was that the one they're talking about?
I think mine was Legend Valley, but the same rule applies. There should be I understand that there is a decibel sort of guideline on that, and I don't think that was respecting that.
Right.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to ordinances on the second reading, 18-33.
Ordinance 18-33 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Labutus, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Lang, an ordinance annexing certain territory generally described as being .576 acres, more or less located in Newark Township, to the city of Newark, Ohio.
You've heard the second reading of 18-33. What is your wish?
Mr. President.
Mr. Rath?
Make a motion to adopt 18-33.
Motion by Mr. Rath. Second. Second by Mr. Lang. I believe Mr. Sassen would like to make a comment here before we discuss this. Mr. Sassen.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I indicated at committees, this was a petition to annex that was filed by a married couple as part of an estate planning process. Subsequent to the bulk of this process having transpired, the husband passed away. The surviving spouse, who's the remaining owner of the property, does not wish to go forward with the annexation. I've received that in writing from her attorney, the attorney that represented them in the filing of the petition. He does not feel that it is possible to withdraw the annexation now that the county commissioners have approved the same and we're at the very last step of the process. So he has asked that Newark City Council reject this annexation so that this parcel of property can remain in Newark Township per Mrs. McCoy's wishes. So on their behalf, I'm asking council to reject this annexation.
Thank you, Director Stassen. Is there any other discussion on 18-33?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rapp?
based on Mr. Sassen's comments, I'll be voting no on this. I would encourage everybody else to vote no as well.
Thank you, Mr. Rapp. Anyone else? Autumn, please call the roll vote.
Mr. Rapp?
No.
Mr. Blake?
No.
Mr. Bub?
No.
Mr. Cost?
No.
Mr. Fennell?
No.
Mr. Frazier?
No.
Ms. Hall?
No.
Mr. Labutus?
No.
Mr. Lang?
No.
And Mr. Marmee?
No.
1833 then fails 10-0. Next, we have resolutions on the first reading, 18-79.
Resolution 1879 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rath, Mr. Lang, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to prepare and submit applications to the Department of Homeland Security for fiscal year 2018 Fire Act grant programs in support of training programs, equipment purchases, funding for personnel, fire prevention, and fire safety programs throughout the city.
18-79 will be held for 2 weeks for a second reading. Next, we have 18-80.
Resolution 1880 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rath, Mr. Lang, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
18-80 will be...
Mr. President.
Mr. Marmee.
Make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on Resolution 1880.
Motion to waive the 2-day reading rule by Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have some items here where we collect money for the JEDs, and then we have to disperse that, and we have to get that to them as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Autumn, please call the roll to waive the 2-day reading rule.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Cost,
Yes.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
and Mr. Marmee.
Yes.
2-day reading rule has been waived. Mr. Marmee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt Resolution 18-80.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Marmee.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. Is there any discussion on 18-80? Seeing none, Autumn, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Blake,
Yes.
Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Cost,
Yes.
Mr. Fennell,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
and Mr. Marmee.
Yes.
18-80 passes 10-0. Next, on the first reading, we have 18-81.
Resolution 18-81 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rath, Mr. Lang, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to prepare and submit applications to the Ohio Department of Public Safety for fiscal year 2018 Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant funding.
18-81 will be held for 2 weeks for the next reading. Actually, it will be held till November 5th for our next meeting. And finally, we have 18-82.
Resolution 1882 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rath, Mr. Lang, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
And 18-82 will be held to our next reading, which will be our next meeting, which will be November 5th. And that concludes our legislation this evening. Next, we have our second opportunity for comments from citizens. Do we have anyone else who would like to speak? Mr. Crawford? Do we have anyone else? While Mr. Crawford's coming up. Okay.
Excuse me, Daniel Crawford, 163 South 2nd Street. Just wanted to come up very briefly. Today marks the 7th anniversary of the birth of an organization you guys are aware of that I helped found, the 99% in North Central Ohio, which we organized our first event at the gazebo. And obviously it's around the 1-year point when we found out that the gazebo was going to be removed from its previous location. So one of the interesting things that I've had since I started first 2 times I ran for office is that people see me come out and speak out a lot more, and sometimes will even come up to me at work and ask me to if I could look into something or have tell me something they want to tell me. And sometimes I have to take it with a grain of salt, and other times it piques my interest. And actually, one here recently, someone even left me an anonymous letter with some details of things that they looked into, or they said they did. And because I want to try and be as well informed as possible about what I'm talking about and weighing my decisions on things, based on their letter, I wrote up just a few questions based on what they put in there. And some of these were their own questions. I reworded it to try and look better into what they were saying. But there's just 4 primary questions here. That's number 1: did the private donors supporting the gazebo's removal write checks to the city of Newark so that such could then be forwarded to Robertson Construction for the purpose of paying for the removal both of the gazebo and the concrete picnic table bases? If so, where is the public record of such transactions? Number 2, if a check wasn't written to the city directly, then is there some public record of a financial transaction between the private donors and Robertson Construction, considering that the property affected belonged to the people of Newark? Number 3, did the private donors write any checks to the Community Improvement Corporation, the CIC, or the Newark Development Partners for the purpose of forwarding said payment to Robertson Construction? If so, is it possible that these donors were then able to claim such a contribution as a tax deduction? And finally, number 4, is it not true that the CIC and NDP receive federal grant dollars? Moreover, with a number of city officials sitting on as board members thereof, would it not likewise be the case that its decisions and financial transactions ought to be subject to public records requests? If this is the case, then wouldn't it be incumbent upon these city officials to submit to the people a list of any and all private donors whose contributions may have influenced the decision to remove public property from the square? Now, I don't expect answers from these directly because a lot of it requires some details, but I'll forward a copy of the questions to every member of council via email. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Anyone from administration this evening? Director Baum. This is our safety director.
Yeah, Safety Director Steve Baum. I have 2 things tonight. Number 1, I want to congratulate the fire chief and his staff on coming up with a creative outside-the-box solution to a problem that we told you that we would try and fix before building Station 5. I think they've accomplished at least part of that. The second would be in response to the Roost on the River complaints. First of all, we will certainly address the profanity. I'll look into that. And we can talk about the volume. There is a city noise ordinance. It's 85 decibels, but it's 85 decibels where you live, and there's a meter that the police can bring out and measure it. But the Roost on the River people did meet with myself, the police chief, the fire chief, property maintenance, the fire inspector, and the city engineer a couple times before this concert. They're interested in doing everything right. They jumped through every hoop that I put in front of them. They had private EMS, private security. They understood that they had to have it shut off by midnight, and I believe that they did. I would also like to put your minds at ease. This isn't an every weekend place. They're not interested in having a concert every weekend. That's not in their goal. They do own the property. They're looking at a few concerts a year, a couple weekend concerts, and a few other day concerts. So we'll address it as it comes. They'll certainly meet with the city officials, but as far as not allowing it, I don't have a mechanism to say. I encourage them to think about their choice of music, but what they choose to do, as long as they're within acceptable limits, they're a free enterprise business. So I just wanted to let you know, and you know, that they did meet with the city. They were responsive, and I'm sure that they will accept this criticism that I'll give them about a couple of the choices that they made with equal grace, that they prepared for this. So, and if you have any complaints, I'm in the book. Steve Baum at newarkohio.net. Please send them to me. I took a couple from Jeremy, and I've spoken to Dee before the meeting. So, and I got one from Mr. Boyles. So I'm happy to hear your specific complaints, and I'll be happy to address it with a couple that owns the property. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Sassen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate council's cooperation on 18-33. With that, I will pass.
Mayor Hall.
I will pass this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Rath.
Thank you. I'll call a service committee meeting, and with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Mr. Blake.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to thank the residents from Beacon Road and from Summit Street for coming tonight. It's always important to hear what's going on in the neighborhood, and hopefully we can continue conversations with you. I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Mr. Bubb.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bubb. Mr. Cost.
I'd also like to thank you all for coming this evening. I think we do need to take a look at the levels of volume and the language concerns to make this so it could be acceptable for everyone in the residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goss. Mr. Fennell? Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Frazier?
Mr. President, thank you guys for coming in. This is a public forum. If there's any concerns across the board, not just the concert, please come and address it. You have the safety director that has already heard about it, can get in front of it the next time and follow the process that's there of using your representatives, using the forms that's available to you to communicate what the issues are and find a resolution. And I think the good side of it is the venue seems to want to be good neighbors if they're already cooperating with the city. So hopefully the next time a lot of these issues will resolve themselves through communication. I want to thank the Newark Fire Department for letting me ride along on Saturday with them out of Station 2, and it was a really eye-opening experience as far as their professionalism, their ability, the technology that's there, the amount of work that it requires to do the job, and the amount of time that they're on site. And it was very eye-opening, very rewarding, and I just cannot say enough about working with those 5 guys, how great they were, and their abilities, and their ability to diagnose serious medical conditions by sight, and their ability to respond and change and go from waiting to responding in a blink of an eye. The other thing I wanted to highlight was transportation. I prepared recommendations to the transit board from a flex route transportation perspective of some of the opportunities that are available with the city to dramatically improve our transportation model and leverage the existing services that exist to drastically improve the usability of the city as well as the affordability for our residents. And so I'll continue to go the third Wednesday at 5 p.m. every month to the board, especially during this transition period, to try to provide insights and recommendations that represent the needs of our community and the wishes that I see to improve transportation and provide it to our citizens. I want to call an Economic Development Committee, and with that, I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Hall?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to thank you for coming tonight and talking about the concert. I feel like you do as well. Much less, the only thing you do is leave your house for the day. So we'll be talking about it. We'll try to work something out. It was just too loud, obviously. But thank you for your comments, and hope to stay in touch as well. So, also, I wanted to thank Director Rhodes. He has found another wall for our project, our mural project. We've been working on a Hopewell Indian artwork from last year, and the wall that we had found, they were going to renovate the building, so we lost the wall. He has found another wall. He's spent so much time in this. And as of tomorrow, we start another project for our mural project. So now we need another wall. We need 2 walls. But I just wanted to thank him for his time. He's spent a lot of time in this, as well as Dan Motor with Explore Licking County. So I'll keep you updated on that. So with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Labutus? I will pass this evening. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Labutus. Mr. Lyon?
Yeah, I'd like to start thanking everyone that came tonight to talk about the new venue. To echo, what Mr. Frazier said, this is the right forum to come and do that. It sounds like you've certainly got the attention of some of my colleagues from that area of town. Director Baum is on it, so I just encourage you to continue contacting all of your officials if this continues to be an issue. Hopefully it won't be. I also wanted to compliment Mr. Frazier. He put together a great plan, I think, or at least some initial great thoughts that I think we can work from and should be discussed on transportation. I hope that the Transportation Board gives those serious consideration. I understand it's not a city proposal. It's Mark going outside of his responsibility as an elected official of this board and just spending time on the issue and putting together what I think is a really thoughtful proposal. So I hope that gets some serious consideration. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. And Mr. Marmon?
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to call a Finance Committee meeting, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmon. I'd like to add my thanks to everyone for coming this evening. You're always welcome. Your opinions are always welcome. So thanks for showing up. Our next committee meeting is going to be November 5th, which is Monday. The committees are at 5:45. Full council will start at 7 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Labuda, second by Mr. Koss. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.